You feel something changing, a restlessness that is anxiety but anticipation. Conversations that used to stall now flow. Doors you pushed hard against are starting to yield on their own. And you wonder, is this God clearing the path? Or is it just my mind conjuring illusions? Because the worst mistake you can make is confusing optimism with divine guidance. Or worse, ignoring real direction thinking it's coincidence. In the next few minutes, you'll learn exactly how to identify when God is genuinely opening a door in your life, what the unmistakable biblical signs of divine direction are, and why the peace of God is unlike anything you've ever felt before. Prepare yourself, because what follows might completely change how you make decisions. First, the symptom. You start noticing patterns. 3 different people mention the same opportunity in a week. A problem that seemed impossible to solve unexpectedly unravels. Toxic relationships you've tried to end for years finally conclude without drama. And you stand there on the border between gratitude and suspicion, thinking, am I forcing connections that don't exist? A study by the Universidade Federal do Rio de Janeiro on decision-making in uncertain contexts showed that Brazilians over 35 have extreme difficulty distinguishing between genuine intuition and confirmation bias. 64% of respondents admitted they've made important decisions based on signs they later realized were just coincidences they wanted to see. So how do you differentiate real divine direction from religious self-deception? Because both can seem equally convincing in the moment. The difference lies in objective criteria, not subjective feelings. And the Bible is far more specific about this than most preachers tell you. Here's the first key. Philippians chapter 4 verse 7 speaks of the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding. The Greek word used for surpasses is hyperikousa, meaning to transcend, to go beyond, to completely overcome.
Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life, a guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming, with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10,000 readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who were tired of living in the fog, ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.
This peace is not the absence of challenges. It's the presence of inner security even when external circumstances are chaotic. It's neurological, not just emotional. When you're on the right path, your parasympathetic nervous system activates. You can sleep. Your stomach doesn't churn, your jaw relaxes. This isn't a placebo. It's a physiological response to spiritual alignment. The HeartMath Institute, which studies heart coherence, found that people reporting inexplicable peace during difficult decisions exhibit heart rate variability patterns consistent with states of high internal coherence. This means your heart and brain are synchronized, not in conflict. And this synchrony facilitates discernment. You're not just waiting to feel good. You're measuring whether your entire being is aligned or divided. Now, peace alone isn't enough, because you can have peace from being in denial. You might feel temporary relief from avoiding necessary confrontation. So the Bible adds a second criterion: confirmation in the Word. Psalm 119 verse 105 says, "Your word is a lamp for my feet, a light on my path." The Hebrew word for lamp is ner, which is a small oil lamp that illuminates only the next few steps, not the entire path. God rarely gives you the full map, but He always illuminates the next step, and that next step will never contradict clear biblical principles. If the door opening leads you to a relationship with an unbeliever, it's not from God, no matter how many coincidences occur. 2 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 14 is crystal clear. Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. If the business opportunity requires dishonesty, it's not divine direction, no matter how much money it promises. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 1 states that false scales are an abomination to the Lord. Divine direction never contradicts divine character. Let me tell you about Paul and the Macedonian vision. Acts chapter 16. Paul wants to go preach in Asia, but the Holy Spirit stops him. He tries to go to Bithynia, and again he's blocked. Frustrating, right? He's trying to do God's work and being hindered. But then he has a vision, a man from Macedonia begging for help. And immediately the text says, "We sought to go to Macedonia, concluding that God had called us." Three things here are crucial. First, Paul tried logical seeming paths before receiving clear direction. Second, he was blocked before being directed. Third, when the direction came, he acted immediately without questioning. The Greek word used for concluding is symbibazontes, which means to bring together evidence, connect the dots, reach a logical conclusion. Paul didn't just have a feeling. He evaluated, I tried 2 directions and was blocked. I had a specific vision. My companions confirm it. This is discernment, not impulse. And here's the detail that changes everything. Paul only received clear direction after the wrong doors closed. God doesn't always tell you where to go before closing the doors that aren't for you. If you're realizing this content is giving you criteria you've never had before, subscribe to the channel now. Many people consume this kind of teaching, benefit from it, but forget to subscribe. And then, this content doesn't reach others who are making terrible decisions due to a lack of biblical discernment. Click below and activate notifications. Here's the third criterion: counsel from spiritually mature individuals. Proverbs chapter 15 verse 22 says, "Where there is no counsel, plans fail, but with many counselors they succeed." The Hebrew word for counselors is yoetz, which isn't just anyone with an opinion. It's someone with proven wisdom, experience in making difficult decisions, and no personal stake in your outcome. If you only seek advice from people who will tell you what you want to hear, you're not seeking discernment, you're seeking validation. The Fundação Getúlio Vargas published a study on decision-making processes in Brazilian business leaders. They found that those who maintained a circle of advisors without conflicts of interest made decisions 41% better, measured by long-term results, than those who decided alone or only with emotionally involved people. 41%. Collective wisdom works because it exposes your blind spots. But there's a critical detail. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 14 uses the Hebrew word tachbalot for wise counsel. It literally means strategic directions, naval maneuvers. It's not superficial opinion. It's people who have truly thought through the implications, seen the risks, and still confirm that the direction makes sense. If your counselors only give you motivational verses without asking hard questions, they aren't counselors, they're cheerleaders. Now comes the part that frustrates many. Fourth criterion, timing. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 1 says, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens." The Hebrew word for appointed time is zeman, meaning a specific moment, not a generic duration. There's a huge difference between the right door at the wrong time and the right door at the right time. And forcing timing is one of the most common ways to destroy what God was preparing. Abraham is a brutal example of this. God promises he will have a son. Abraham waits longer. Nothing happens. Then Sarah suggests, "Use Hagar, my servant." Makes sense, right? God promised offspring. Here's a viable path. Abraham agrees. Ishmael is born. And it creates a conflict that lasts for millennia to this day, because it was the right promise executed at the wrong time, in the wrong way. 13 years later, in God's timing, Isaac is born. And then the promise is fulfilled in the way God planned. Genesis chapter 16 shows Abraham making the decision with Hagar. But notice, God didn't appear beforehand to say, "Don't do this." He let Abraham make the mistake. Why? Because free will has consequences, and some lessons are only learned through error. But Genesis chapter 21 shows the redemption. Isaac is born, the promise is fulfilled, and Abraham finally understands that God's timing is part of the plan, not an obstacle to it. A study by the Universidade de São Paulo on regret in life decisions showed that 57% of Brazilians over 40 identify wrong timing as the biggest source of regret, not wrong choices. They chose the right thing, but at the wrong moment, and this led to consequences that could have been avoided with patience. Timing matters as much as direction. Leave a like now if you've ever forced a door that seemed right but the timing was wrong and you paid the price. I want to know how many of you learned this lesson the hard way. And leave the word discernment in the comments if you're committed to seeking biblical criteria before making your next big decision. This feedback helps me know what kind of content to produce. Here's the fifth criterion, and it's the most neglected: visible fruit. Matthew chapter 7 verse 20 says, "By their fruit you will recognize them." Jesus was talking about false prophets, but the principle applies to decisions. If the door opening produces the fruit of the Spirit in your life, it's confirmation. If it produces chronic anxiety, relational division, ethical compromise, it's a giant red flag. Galatians chapter 5 verses 22 and 23 lists the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. If you're considering a decision that will make you more loving, more patient, more self-controlled, it's a good sign. If it will make you more anxious, more irritable, more obsessed, it's a bad sign. Fruit doesn't lie. You can rationalize motives. You can't rationalize consequences. The Instituto de Pesquisa Económica Aplicada conducted a study on subjective well-being during career transitions in Brazil. They found that people who made changes aligned with deep personal values, even when those changes temporarily reduced income, reported a 43% increase in life satisfaction. People who made changes solely for money or status reported a 27% decline. Long-term fruit reveals if the tree was good. Now let's get to practical application. How do you use these 5 criteria in a real decision? I'll give you a protocol. First step, write down the decision you're considering specifically. Changing jobs is vague. Accepting an offer from company X that pays 20% more, but requires moving cities is specific. Specificity exposes details you overlook when thinking generically. Second step, assess peace. When you think about this decision and remove all the catastrophic what-ifs, do you feel peace or anxiety? If anxiety persists even after prayer and processing, it might not be the path. But be careful, fear of change is not lack of peace. Paul had peace to go to Jerusalem even knowing imprisonment awaited him. Peace is not the absence of challenges, it's the presence of conviction. Third step, check biblical alignment. Does the decision violate any clear principles of Scripture? Does it require dishonesty? Does it harm your family? Does it compromise your integrity? If the answer is yes to any of these questions, stop, no matter how good the opportunity seems. Obedience to God always outweighs apparent opportunity. Fourth step, seek counsel. Identify 3 people who know you well, have spiritual maturity, and have no stake in the outcome. Present the decision without revealing your inclination. Ask them to pray and give you honest feedback. If all 3 raise the same red flags, listen. If all 3 confirm it makes sense, that's significant weight. Fifth step, wait for confirming fruit. Don't make irreversible decisions at the peak of excitement. Give it time for fruit to appear. If it's a job offer, ask for 2 weeks to consider. If it's a relationship, slow down and observe how the person acts under pressure. Fruit takes time to mature. Haste kills discernment. Moses at the burning bush is a perfect example of the process. Exodus chapter 3. God appears and says, "Go free Israel." Moses doesn't rush off excitedly. He asks questions. Who am I to go? What is your name? What if they don't believe me? I'm not eloquent. 5 objections, and God patiently answers each one. Why? Because God doesn't fear questions. He fears impulsive obedience without understanding. The Hebrew word God uses to call Moses is hineni, meaning, "Here I am," readiness to listen. But readiness to listen is not automatic agreement. Moses listened, questioned, processed, and then obeyed. And when he finally went, he had clarity, not just excitement. Clarity sustains, excitement evaporates. Share this video with someone who is in the middle of a difficult decision right now. Someone who is confused about which door to enter. Someone who needs biblical criteria, not just internet opinions. Send it to that person now. It could be the discernment they need to avoid destroying the next 5 years of their life. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Sometimes God closes all the doors and leaves you in an empty hallway for a while. And that's not punishment, it's preparation. Joseph spent 2 years in prison after interpreting the cupbearer's dream, who promised to remember him. 2 years. Genesis chapter 40, verse 23 says the cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. That's brutal. Joseph had the door to freedom right there, and it closed. But those 2 years weren't a loss. They were refinement. When Pharaoh finally called Joseph, he was ready. Not just capable, mature. The Hebrew word used for the cupbearer's forgetting is shakash, meaning to forget completely, to erase from memory. It wasn't mild negligence. It was total abandonment. And Joseph stayed there, in the empty hallway, with no doors open, no political connections. Just trust that God hadn't forgotten even when everyone else did. The Universidade Federal de Minas Gerais conducted research on periods of transition and personal growth. They found that people who went through forced waiting periods of 6 months or more, where no door opened, developed 52% greater emotional resilience than people who had quick transitions. Why? Because waiting without losing faith builds spiritual muscle that quick success never builds. Activate the notification bell now, because the next video will teach you exactly what to do when all doors are closed and God seems silent. Many people give up at this stage, but it's precisely at this stage that your faith is tested and your character is formed. Activate it so you don't miss it. Here's the 6th criterion that few teach. Cost. Luke chapter 14, verses 28 to 30. Jesus says, "For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost to see if he has enough to complete it, lest, after he has laid the foundation and cannot finish it, all who see it begin to mock him?" An open door without counting the cost becomes an unfinished tower, and an unfinished tower is a destroyed testimony. The Greek word for count the cost is psephizo, meaning to calculate carefully, not a superficial estimate. Jesus is saying, before you walk through the door, sit down and calculate the real cost. Not just financial cost, emotional cost, relational cost, time cost, energy cost. If you can't afford the full cost, don't go through the door yet. Wait until you're ready. A study by Sebrae on small business failures in Brazil showed that 83% of entrepreneurs who failed in the first 2 years underestimated the cost of the opportunity. They saw the open door, entered excitedly, and discovered they didn't have the resources to sustain what they started. Excitement opens doors. Wisdom calculates if you can afford to stay on the other side. Here's the final truth. God's direction doesn't always make sense logically at first. Noah building an ark with no rain in sight, Abraham sacrificing Isaac, Joshua marching around Jericho, Peter stepping out of the boat to walk on water. None of these decisions made rational sense, but they all had the criteria: clear command from God, inner peace despite external madness, confirmation through circumstances, and willingness to pay the cost. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1 defines faith. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. The Greek word for assurance is hypostasis, meaning substance, concrete reality. Faith is not vague hope. It's solid conviction based on God's character, not on visible circumstances. And when you have that conviction, you act even when it makes no sense to anyone else. So if God is opening a door in your life right now, you will know, not by fleeting emotion, by alignment of criteria. Peace that transcends logic, biblical confirmation, counsel from the wise, timing that makes sense in retrospect, visible fruit, and willingness to pay the cost. And when these 6 criteria align, you no longer need to question. You just need to obey.
Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life, a guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming, with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you and strengthen your mind, also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10,000 readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you, who were tired of living in the fog, ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.